Hi guys, Sci-Fi Recapped here. Today I am going to explain the film called The Traveler. Spoilers ahead, watch out and stay safe. The movie opens up with two kids, Jodie and Brandon, throwing water balloons at the nearby pedestrians. They have been best friends since long, and often like doing mischievous things. Unfortunately, while they are having fun, one of their neighbors, Mrs. Gunson, catches them and she secretly records their video and chastises them for being a menace to society. After this, Mrs. Gunson takes them to Jodie's mom, June, and shows the video to her. Here, it is clear that the kids are tired of Mrs. Gunson, as she always interrupts their fun. Even June doesn't like her. Mrs. Gunson gives the example of a nearby kid named Jonathan, who used to steal from the neighbors. One day, he was caught and sentenced to 200 hours of community service. Mrs. Gunson reveals that Jonathan is still struggling from the punishment, and his whole life has been turned upside down. After the speech, Mrs. Gunson leaves with Brandon. She now wants to go to his house and complain to his parents. Meanwhile, Jane takes Jodie inside the room and chastises her for always causing trouble. The teenager tries to explain that having fun is not a crime, but Jane makes it clear that if she does it again, she will never be allowed to go outside. From their conversation, it is evident that Jane is always troubled because of her daughter. She is a single mother who works multiple shifts to support the family, but Jodie always keeps messing with her schedule. This time, Jane grounds her daughter for a week, warning her to stay inside the house. After she leaves, however, Jodie immediately calls her best friend, and the two start playing video games. Jonathan, who is busy cleaning the area. Just then, everyone stops at the same time, as if an external force is controlling them. They completely freeze, not even a single person moves an inch. Then, a mysterious guy with blue skin approaches Jonathan from behind, and zaps him with his hands. Following this, the scene cuts to Jodie and Brandon, who are still playing video games. One thing leads to another and they start fighting inside the room. Unfortunately, they end up destroying the television, and at the same time, Jane enters. Furious, she sends Brandon away and then starts scolding her daughter for being irresponsible and reckless. First, she invited a friend when she was grounded, and then she broke the TV. Surprisingly, the teenager responds that it was just a TV. She still does not want to take responsibility for her actions. Hearing this, Jane becomes upset, and she starts thinking if Jodie cares about her at all. She claims that her years are being taken away from her because she has to work extremely hard. Sometimes she wonders if she should continue living. In the next scene, Jodie heads downstairs, where she is approached by a scared old man. He is none other than Jonathan, who has aged rapidly after being zapped by the stranger. Jonathan tries to explain the entire ordeal to Jodie, however, she does not recognize him. So, to make her understand, he brings out a large box that was left by the stranger. It has a card on it that says, "Take and I'll take from you." Jodie is confused by the strange device, but before she could inquire about it, Jonathan runs away. After a while, Jodie decides to take the box home to examine it. However, before she can carry it, the cunning Mrs. Gunson spots her. She assumes that the teenager has stolen the device, so she takes it for herself. Jodie tries to claim that an old man gifted it to her, but to no avail. After a while, Mrs. Gunson hides the strange box in her locker and leaves. Jodie watches this from nearby, and at an opportune moment, she goes to the locker and opens it using her hair clip. She then brings out the box and carries it to her home. There, she opens it and finds a strange device inside. Curious, she presses it, and surprisingly, the world around her freezes. But Jodie doesn't realize this, and when she presses the button again, everything returns back to normal. Just then, her mom enters the room and asks where she got the device from. Jodie tries to claim that a friend of hers gifted it to her, but Jane assumes that her daughter has again started stealing. So, she snatches the device and attempts to throw it away, but right then, Jodie inadvertently presses the button. Because of this, everything freezes, including her mother. This shocks Jodie for a while, but soon, she starts having fun with it. At first, she tricks Jane by freezing her and hiding the box away. Then, she gets out of her house, despite being grounded, and meets Brandon, who is also frozen in time. He is holding his phone on one hand and ice cream on the other. Jodie switches them, and when she unfreezes the time, Brandon accidentally puts the ice cream in his ears. Shocked, he asks her how she did it, and Jodie finally reveals about the strange device. After this, the two press the button together and decide to have some fun downstairs. They see several people stuck in time and start messing them up one by one. First, they replace a woman's sandwich with a flower, then they put an egg beneath another woman's feet. They even mess up a gardener by pointing the direction of his water hose right at him. When they press the button and unfreeze everything, chaos unfolds. All the people are left enraged, but they have no clue how it happened. Following this, the kids decide to go house to house and steal food. They appear to be having the time of their lives. They can annoy people, eat all that they want, and even steal money without having to face any repercussions. However, little did they know that everything comes at a price. Someone is coming to teach them a lesson. In the next scene, as Brandon and Jodie are chatting in their room, they hear a sudden noise coming from outside. This startles them, as the world is supposed to be in freeze mode. They slowly go outside to inspect and learn that Mrs. Gunson's locker has been broken by someone. Suddenly, the two hear some footsteps approaching them and become terrified. So, Brandon and Jodie pretend as if they are frozen as well. After a few seconds, the mysterious blue man approaches them. He inspects the two teenagers thoroughly, and despite his best efforts to intimidate them, they don't budge. This convinces him that Brandon and Jodie are not suspicious, so he leaves. After a while, as the teenagers are contemplating their next move, they hear Mrs. Gunson screaming from her room. Terrified, they rush to inspect, and from the window, they see the blue man zapping Mrs. Gunson with a strange blue current. The latter asks why he is doing all this, and the man shows her the same card which says "Take and I'll take from you." Here, it is revealed that Mrs. Gunson is being punished for always stealing from her neighbors. Although she acts tough on the kids and reprimands them for having fun, she herself is a hardcore thief. The blue man found out about this and zapped a part of her face, turning her into an old woman. Unfortunately, once he is done, he notices the kids peeking through the window and goes after them. Jodie and Brandon quickly rush upstairs and lock themselves in a room. They try to make sense of the situation, and this is when Jodie realizes that the old man who approached her earlier was actually Jonathan. He was also punished for being a bad influence to society. Now, the blue man is probably after Jodie because she stole the box from him. Terrified, she plans to return it immediately, hoping the man will forgive her. The two then leave the box downstairs and wait for the man to retrieve it. However, the plan doesn't work, as despite the man getting his box back, he still doesn't stop pursuing the children. After a small chase, he eventually corners them in a room and proceeds to zap Brandon. But right then, Jodie stops him. She pleads with the blue man to leave her best friend alone, claiming that he has nothing to do with it. It was she who stole the box and used it for her pleasure. If there is someone who needs to be punished, it is her. Hearing this, the blue man leaves Brandon and goes after her. He is about to turn her into an old woman, but this time, Brandon stops him. He requests the man to leave them alone. In exchange, they are willing to right all their wrongs. Jodie asks if it is because of all the pranks they have played on their neighbor, but the man says no. Instead, he points towards Jane. Seeing this, Jodie finally realizes that the man is after her because of how she is treating her mother. She always disrespects her and causes her to cry. Jane is trying her best to give them a good life, but Jodie, being a brat, never acknowledges her efforts. Realizing this, Jodie promises to be a good daughter from now on, and the blue man finally agrees. Before leaving, however, he zaps Jodie's hands and turns it old, giving her a small demo of what will happen if she disobeys him again. In the final scene, the two teenagers have stopped pranking others. They now try their best to help their family and anyone who is in need. They have also collected enough money to buy a new television for Jane. The movie ends as Jodie checks her wrinkly hand and expresses gratitude towards the blue man for changing her life. Subscribe and hit that like button to help our channel grow. Turn the notifications on so you won't miss any of our new videos. Thanks for watching.